Okay, in today's video, I'm going to be showing you here how to replace the brake pads as well as the brake rotors on a 2002 through 2005 Ford Thunderbird. This should also be very similar for the Lincoln LS as well. And this vehicle here is disc brakes all the way around, as well as it does have four-wheel ABS on this vehicle. I think that all of these Thunderbirds, as well as the Lincoln LS, all have ABS all the way around. I could be wrong, but I'll be showing you how to do it with the ABS. I already did the other side, so I'm just going to be showing you here the one side in the front and the one side in the rear. And obviously it's the same process for the other side. If you're wondering how you want to know if you need brakes or not, I have the old pads from, I've already done the driver's side already. And if you take a look here, these pads are pretty worn. Usually there's a wear indicator here on the side, and you can't even see that wear indicator because it's so wore down. And if you look here at the new pads, these here are the new pads here. And if you look here, you have your wear indicator here, and once it wears down past this indicator, then you know you need to replace the brake pads. And if you look here at the new pads next to the old pads, you can tell how much more worn this is. So this definitely does need brakes. I'm gonna be showing you here how to do it. I've already done the driver's side. I'm putting on drilled and slotted rotors along with high performance pads. Depending on what you're doing, it may be slightly different, but should be pretty much the same procedure overall. So the first thing you're going to do here is you're going to come over here, you're going to want to take the caliper off first. So what you're going to want to do is there's two 13mm bolts here that bolt into the slide pins. You're going to take that off, so you have one up here at the top and one down here at the bottom. So to get those taken off, then we get the caliper taken off. Okay, I might have said 13mm, actually it's a 12mm. So what I did is I actually went ahead and I sprayed some PB Blaster. You can spray some penetrating oil in here, just kind of in between the bolts here, and just kind of helps with breaking them loose. And then what I'm going to do is I'm using a wrench, just because there's not really enough space to get a ratchet, especially on this top one. So I'm just going to put a wrench on here, and then these can be on here just a little bit tight, so you want to take a mallet and hit the wrench with that. Okay, so once you get the two bolts taken off, then you just want to take the caliper off. And once you get the caliper taken off, you're going to want to hang it up here. I just have mine hung up with a couple of bungee cords here, hanging up from the control arm, the upper control arm. And just the reason for this is you just don't want it hanging from the brake hose, because you don't want to put any extra weight on that brake hose. So I just have it hung up here, and it's out of the way as well. So got that hung up and out of the way. The next thing you're going to do is you're going to take out the brake bracket here. This here is what holds your brake pads in place. And to do that, it's going to be two 15mm bolts. If you look down here at the bottom, there's one right here by the tie rod end. Then up here in the top, if you're looking, it's kind of hidden. It's actually in the back here of this. It's kind of hidden back in here. So it's 15mm. To get to this one, you will actually need to use an extension on the 15mm on the ratchet. Okay. I went ahead, I got the bracket taken off of here, off the rotor. I set that off to the side. I will be changing out the pads in that, as well as the hardware, and sanding everything down and making it, lubing everything up and making sure it all works there. I'm also going to be changing out the rotor here. Usually you can tell when the rotor needs replaced, because it'll have this almost like vinyl record effect to it. It'll look almost like a record. Or if you're braking and the steering wheel is shaking a lot, or getting a little bit of jerking when you're braking, it usually means it needs new brake rotors. Generally on a lot of newer cars, it is the brake rotors generally need to be replaced when the pads are replaced. So if you're replacing this brake rotor, it should just slide right off. If you still have the original rotors on, which this car does, it has these little clips right here. You'll want to take these out. You just got one here, then one here. It's just two of the wheel studs have these clips. Just take a little needle nose and maybe a flathead, and you can just stick that in there. You can pull these clips out. When you put the new rotors in, it's unnecessary to put these back in or anything like that. You don't need new ones. The lug nuts will hold them in just fine. This is just, these are like one-time clips, only if you have the original brakes. So I'm just gonna go ahead and get these taken out. And I'm gonna get the rotor taken off. I'm gonna get the new rotor put on. So if you still have the original rotors on, you want to pull these clips off. I did get them off. It's just really a combination using a needle nose and a flathead screwdriver. They're really a pain to get off. Eventually, if you get them loose enough, you can just spin them the rest of the way off. Yeah, luckily they only have them on two of the wheel studs and not all of them, because they are really annoying to get off. And then once you've got those taken off of there, you just put those, you can just throw those out. You don't need those again. And then you're just gonna go ahead and pull the rotor off. The rotor will just slide right off, assuming it's not rusted to the hub or anything. And then once you get the rotor off of here, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to take a look here at the hub, and you're going to want to take a little bit of like a wire brush or some steel wool or something, and just kind of clean this up, clean this down a little bit, and then I'll go ahead and get the new rotor installed. So I'm gonna go ahead and get that wheel hub cleaned up. While this is off here, you can also take a look at your wheel bearing and all that. And you can get a better look at your suspension and everything in here as well. So I want to take a little inspection in here, and then you'll want to get this cleaned up, and I'll get the new rotor put on. Okay, so then I'm putting on drilled and slotted rotors here just for better cooling. And those do have labels on them. You want to put the specific ones on the specific sides. This one did have a sticker on it that said front passenger side, so you want to make sure that gets on the proper side. I think you just put regulars on. It may or may not matter depending on what brand you're using. Because of the way that the cooling is on these, it does matter. What you're going to do is you're first going to put it on backwards, just like this. And what you're going to do is you're going to take some brake clean. You want to spray it down real good. Spray that down. And the reason for this is when they package these, they put an oil on them. And that oil is supposed to help prevent rusting and stuff like that. And it's supposed to help keep them clean until you install them on the car. The issue with the oil is if you don't brake clean them before you put them on the car, and you have that oil in there, it'll get between the pads and hit the rotor, and it'll actually cause damage to the rotor. So you definitely want to make sure to brake clean the rotor before you stick it on there. So I always put the rotor on first backwards like this. I brake clean it. Then I'm going to pull it off, and I'm going to flip it around the other way, and I'm going to brake clean the other side. It's very important that you do this part. I have heard of people who haven't done this. They'll go off to drive their car, and the brakes will start smoking, or it'll warp the rotors and do all sorts of damage. So if you're gonna spend the money to put new rotors on, definitely spend the money, spend a couple dollars, get a can of brake clean, and clean all this up. So I went ahead, I got all that cleaned up. Now I'm gonna come over here to the bracket here. And what you're gonna wanna do here is you're gonna wanna take the pads out of the bracket, so they'll just slide right out of here. And on this car, sometimes it matters what pad is on the inside or what pad's on the outside or what side of the car. In this car, all the pads for the front at least are the same, so it doesn't matter there. You can tell these are pretty worn down, so they definitely did need replaced. You can't even see the wear bar on here, so they're past the minimum wear. Usually when you replace your brake pads when they're at about 20-25% pad left. These, I would say, are probably about 20% pad left. So when I got those taken off, if you don't have new hardware, you're just going to clean up the hardware that's on here and slide the new pads in. So you want to take a wire brush, clean all this down. If you have new hardware, this hardware will just unclip out of here. So just pull this out. You can take a screwdriver behind here or whatever. And this hardware will just come right out. Just like that. And same thing on the other side. And then it'll just slide right out of there. And then once you get both those taken out, you'll want to clean up in here. You want to take the wire brush, clean up behind the hardware, and then clean up behind the hardware on the other side. And then we'll go ahead and get the new hardware put in, and we'll lubricate the slide pins as well as the hardware, and then we'll get the pads put in. Okay, then you want to get the new hardware installed. Only difference between the hardware is just how it fits. Only fit in one way. If the one hardware doesn't fit on the other side, just switch them around. Just because of the way the slide pins are, the one tab on the side here will be lower on the one side than on the other side. So you want to make sure to get that installed right. These here are the slide pins, so you'll want to slide these out. Okay, then what you'll want to do is pull these slide pins out, and you'll have little boots here. So you'll want to pull these off the little boots off. And then you want to lube these up with some brake lube. A lot of times you get a brake kit, they'll come with a little lubrication packet, or you can have a can of brake lube like what I have. If you just use some of this brake and caliper grease, this also works as well. If they come with the little package, you can use that also. So I'm gonna go ahead and take these rubber boots off. I'm gonna lubricate these. I'm gonna stick them in. I'm just gonna work them back and forth in here a few times. I actually have new boots, so I'll put the new boots on and I'll put those in. You want to lubricate both sides, so this side and this side. And then you want to make sure to lubricate the metal here, so you lubricate your hardware here, as well as your hardware here. And then we have the pads over here. And the pads, we're actually going to have to install some hardware on the pads here. So you've got your little hardware here. You want to get these installed. You'll want to reference the old pads. You'll want them going the same way as they're on the old pads. So if you look here at the old pad, you can see that the hardware points inward where the actual pad part is. So I'm going to go ahead and put the hardware on this one. And these will just clip in place. So you'll want it to clip in And then you'll want this to point inward, just like that. And then it'll be the same exact thing. You'll want the other piece of hardware here on this side, as well as then you want to put the 2 pieces of hardware on this pad as well. And then once you've got all that installed, and you've got all this lubricated, then we go ahead and we put this on the car and we put the pads inside of the bracket. So then I went ahead, and once you get everything all lubricated up, everything's put in, the pads will slide into place super easy. I got to put on the car here. I just slid the pads in with the bracket off the car. I was able to slide the pads in. And I put the bracket on the car with the pads already in. You can just slide them in from the top, or you can slide them in from the back or the front, or whatever's easiest. They go into place super simple on this. The next thing you want to do is you're going to put the caliper on. Now, before you go ahead and put the caliper on, the important part is you're going to have to push the pistons in on the caliper before you can put it on the brackets, or on top of the pads. Now, in order to push the pistons in on the caliper, there's a couple ways to do this. The first way would be to take the brake fluid cap off of the brake fluid reservoir, and then you'll put a brake pad on top of here, almost like this, and then you'll take a C-clamp and you'll put it on the bottom of here as well as on the top of here, and you'll push this all the way in. You'll compress that piston back in. As it compresses that piston back in, it'll bring the fluid up in the brake fluid reservoir. And that's why it's important to take that cap off, just so that if that fluid does overfill, just flow out of the reservoir as opposed to cause damage to the braking system. This vehicle does have ABS brakes. Since it does have ABS, I don't want to do any damage to the ABS. If you have dirty brake fluid, it can cause damage to the ABS. So to compress the piston on this, it's going to be a little bit different. If you don't have ABS, you can do it that way. I'm pretty sure, though, that almost all of these, if not all of these, do have ABS. So if you do have ABS, I know all the Thunderbirds do. I'm pretty sure at least the 03 through 05 Thunderbirds do. I'm pretty sure the 02s do as well. And I'm pretty sure all the Lincoln LSs do. I could be wrong, but if you do have ABS, what you're going to do is you're going to crack the brake bleeder open. And then when you have the brake bleeder open, you'll push this in, and it'll push that fluid out of the bleeder as opposed to pushing it back through the ABS module. That'll help prevent damage from the ABS. Then you'll close the bleeder up once you've done that. Then you'll go to the brake fluid reservoir and you'll top off the brake fluid up to in the brake fluid reservoir. So I'm going to go ahead and get all that taken care of. Then I go ahead and I'll put the caliper back on here, and then I'll move on to the rear brakes. So unfortunately, I'm kind of running out of time for the day. I've been really hung up on the rear for a while, getting the rear brakes done. And I'll show you here what the problem is and how you can make this easier on yourself. What you're going to do is you're going to take the caliper off here. It's all the same sizes as the front brakes. It's pretty much the same procedure as the front brakes, except for the piston. When you push the piston in on the rears is a different procedure. And the issue with these is that they do require a special tool to be able to, it's a twist-in piston, so you have to push on it and twist it in at the same time, and it's going to say that it requires a special tool. However, if you do not have a special tool, I actually have learned this. There is a way to do it without the special tool, and what you do is you've got your brake caliper here, and then what you're going to do is you're going to take a oil filter pliers. So you have an oil filter pliers like this, and what you'll do is you'll push in on the piston with the oil filter pliers, just like this. Then as you're pushing down on that piston with the oil filter pliers, you don't have to push super hard or anything, just enough to kind of get it to slide in a little bit. And then as you do this, you're going to take a channel locks, and you're going to want to twist this. You're going to grab onto the metal part. You don't want to grab onto the rubber boot or anything. And you're going to twist it with the channel locks as you push in with the oil filter pliers. If you have the special tool to do that, that's great. It's super easy with the special tool. If you do not, you can do it this way. It's going to take a little bit longer. It's a little more of a pain to do, but it can be done because these do have a twist in thing. So as long as you have a way to push this piston in while you twist it, you're good to get that done. The other thing is the hardware on these rear ones is a pain to get in. You're going to take the whole bracket out. You're going to put it in with the bracket out. It's really hard to get it all to line up and all to go in. You really want to sand this down really good and when you put the new hardware in, so you can get the pads in and out easy, because it is a pain to do that as well. And that's kind of where I got held up with the caliper held me up especially. So I'm going to get all that done. It's still the same size as the front. Everything else was changing. The rotor still the exact same as the front. Unfortunately, I'm just running out of time to make the video, but that is how you do the rear. So I'm going to get this replaced, and then I'll show you the procedure here once it's all finished. Okay, so once you've got all the brake pads, the rotors, everything put on, everything secured, you're going to want to tighten down all the lug nuts. You're going to want to torque them all to the specification here. And then you're going to put the hubcaps back on. When you put the hubcaps back on, you're going to want the top of the T-bar down below here, you're going to want it facing straight towards that valve stem cap. And these hubcaps only go on one way. It actually took me a minute to figure this out. They'll only go on this one way. They will not fit on another way. Don't try to force them or anything like that. They are plastic. They can break easy, so you want to make sure to line that up right. And then once you get that lined up right, the next step here is going to be getting it ready to drive. So since all the brakes are done, the first thing you're going to want to do is you're going to come over here to the brake fluid reservoir. I'm going to pull the cap up here and make sure that fluid's all the way up to the max line. If it's all the way up to the max line, that's good. If it's a little bit under, if you've done all 4 brakes, you're going to want to fill it up so it's all the way up there. If it's a little bit over full right now, that's also okay as well. So I'm going to go ahead and put that cap back on. I'm going to leave the hood open here because I will check that level one more time. Now this here is one of the most important parts of the brake job, is pumping the brakes before you attempt. You don't want to attempt to drive the vehicle or do anything like that. You're going to want to pump the brakes up first. And the reason for this is since the caliper pistons are all pushed all the way in to get the calipers back on, the fluid isn't all the way out to those pistons yet. Those pistons are going to push out a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to pump the brake up a few times. The first time you push it, it'll go all the way to the floor. Then you want to keep pumping it here and you'll start to feel it build pressure. Usually do that 3, 4 times, 5 times. So I'm just going to pump it a few times here. Doesn't hurt to do it extra. Then once you've done that, you're going to want to come get back out of the car here. You're going to want to come back here. You're going to want to check the brake fluid level one more time because that fluid may have gone down slightly. So you'll want to check it. Mine's still pretty much right at the full, so it's still good. So I'm going to go ahead and close the hood here. Then you'll want to check here, you've got your brake light on the dash, as well as the ABS light that'll kick on for a second. You first turn the key on, you want to make sure both those lights are working. Then you want to go ahead and start the car up here. And then you want to make sure that neither of those lights are still on, which they both went off, so that's good. So then I'm going to go and push the brake here. I've got power brakes now, so I can push that and put it into gear here. And it's got good solid brakes. So hopefully this video is helpful, and thanks for watching. And then one final thing I did forget to mention is if you're just putting on regular pads and rotors and everything, once you've pumped the brake a few times, you're good to drive. If you're installing performance drilled and slotted rotors such as these, as well as ceramic pads, which is what I installed, it does actually require a break-in procedure or a brake bedding procedure. And I actually completely forgot to mention this. And what the issue is if you don't do this break-in procedure, what you'll have is when you first let off the brake, you'll get this really annoying dragging sound. You won't get as good as high performance braking as you would want. And the way this braking procedure works is you do 4 quick accelerations. You decelerate from 40 miles per hour really quickly 5 times. So you'll want to do that 5 times. It'll accelerate to 40 miles per hour and then slow down. It's 5 times for that. And then you'll want to do that first one really quickly. And then you'll want to do 35 miles per hour down from 35 miles per hour 5 more times. And that one will be, you don't have to do that one as hard. You can do that like moderate deceleration. And then you'll want to drive it for 5 minutes. So look at your clock. I started at 1 o'clock and I drove it around for 5 minutes. Just ran circles around a parking lot for 5 minutes at slow speeds without pushing the brake. And you want to do that for 5 minutes, and that just lets them cool. So what you'll want to do is you want to overheat them, and then you'll want to let them cool down. By the time I got to the second procedure, the slowing down from 35 miles per hour 5 times, by the time I did that third slowing down, I did start to smell that, like, I started to smell the brakes. They smelled really bad. That's okay, that's normal, you want that. And I still continued to do it the 2 more times. Then I drove it around for 5 minutes, let it cool. I completely forgot to mention this until I started driving the car, and without doing the break-in procedure, you will get a terrible noise when you first let off the brake. So you'll definitely want to do this break-in procedure. This is called a brake bedding procedure. This is very important that you do this if you're installing high-performance brakes, such as drilled and slotted, with ceramic pads. If you just have regular pads and rotors, it's unnecessary to do this procedure normally. So I went ahead, I did that. The brakes are working great now, and when I let off the brake now, I get no dragging noise. So you saw earlier in the video when I let off the brake, I was getting that dragging noise. Now I can let off the brake, and I do not have any dragging noise here. So I let off the brake gradually, really slowly. There's no dragging. The brakes feel a lot more responsive now, so definitely want to go through that procedure when you do this. And yeah, hopefully this video was helpful, and thanks for watching.